Oh, there. Living on the edge.
Living on the edge. What's up, everybody? Happy 4th of July.
We're living on the edge.
We're living on the edge right now. Tonight is going to be another noisy episode. We are on a roll. We are doing fantastic with sound quality lately. But as you might be able to hear, there's fireworks going off on both our ends.
Are they fireworks or are they explosions? Did Reptama finally find our secret bunker and send his lizard men to come get us?
I don't know. I'm listening very closely and paying close attention.
I guess we'll have to wait till episode 400 to find out.
Yeah. But yeah, we apologize for the sound. There's been updates for Mike. He will be moving into a space station that is made for recording podcasts soon. So we'll have to deal with this just a little bit longer. And then we'll be back on track.
In space.
In space this time. New and improved sound on Mike's end. Space sound.
Yeah. And in space, nobody can hear me scream. So I can scream till my heart's content. But you'll never hear me because I'm in space.
We were going to talk about something specific. We were excited about it because it was something that we hadn't heard of before. And it's called the Kinderhook creature. And as the name implies, we're dealing with something so weird that even when talking about weird, unknown, or undocumented animals, it earned the coveted title as creature. And I had Mike check into some stuff that I had found, and he found a whole bunch of stuff and found that this area is just rich in paranormal history. What did you find?
So the area of Kinderhook is in Columbia County, New York, which is one of the first settlements in New York State. So this whole entire area is just super, super old. We're talking like Victorian era houses, really, really fucking old shit. The area itself, maybe because of the age, maybe because of other reasons, seems to be a hotbed for hauntings. And Washington Irving even lived in the area for a while. He was tutoring the children of Peter Van Ness, who was a local judge in the area. But he based the legend of Sleepy Hollow on this area of Columbia County, which Kinderhook is a part of. So there's a lot of history of hauntings and different houses being haunted. It seems to be kind of like a resurgence in haunting because a lot of these huge old houses are being purchased by people looking for like a second home. People that are more well-to-do, they want a nice, fancy old house. And there's all these Victorian houses in the area. And a lot of them are being bought up and refurbished so that they're in good condition. And it seems like that tends to awaken spirits in these areas. So for instance, there was in 1941 there was a model and an actress named Esther Leeming Tuttle, and they were looking for a house in the area. They ended up buying this Dutch farmhouse that was owned by a man named Jesse Merwin. Now, interesting to note is that Jesse Merwin was a friend of Washington Irving, and he was the real life person that inspired the character of Ichabod Crane. And Mrs. Tuttle still lives in the house. Her husband has since passed away, but she's 95 years old. And she said that she herself has never experienced any ghosts there, but members of her family had. And on one occasion, an apparition appeared to one of her sons on the front porch. That just appeared and then walked off the porch and disappeared. There was a door in one of the bedrooms that no matter if you locked it, it would unlock by itself and then swing open.
Wow.
And
So
they
even for like poltergeist activity, that's some heavy stuff.
yeah, and unlocking a door. That's like, it's one thing to open a door. You know, you could say it's an old house, whatever. But if it's unlocking the door and then it's opening, that's a little freaky.
Yeah. Imagine waking up in the morning and finding your fucking front door unlocked and open.
Yeah, there's a woman named Jean Hamilton who was the chief executive of Zonos, which is some internet software company. I don't know. I've never heard of them, but she's also a member of an investment banking firm, and she moved into the area with her husband. This was a town still in Columbia County, but it's a different town called Ghent. But they had moved in and they had heard rumors that the house was haunted, but they didn't believe in hauntings, and they really liked the house. It had 10 rooms, 3 bathrooms, and it was this huge colonial house that used to be an inn. And with the house came 350 acres. So it was a huge chunk of property.
That sounds awesome.
And yeah, it really does. But she said after they moved in, they started to hear weird noises. It started with what sounded like furniture being rearranged, but then they started hearing low voices talking on the landing of the stairs. They would hear footsteps walking through the halls. But then they had a guest spend the night, a man by the name of Bill Plack. And he was a banker from Summit, New Jersey, who was visiting the area, and they let him stay in the guest room. So he was sleeping, and he woke up in the middle of the night, and he said he saw this smiling skeletal apparition at the foot of his bed with a white gown. And he said it was wearing like a ruffled collar. Like, I'm picturing in my head like an old-timey sleeping gown,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with the
Shakespearean
the ruffled
sleeping
collar.
gown.
Yeah. And it appeared at the foot of his bed, and he said it started to bob towards him, and then it just vanished.
Bob towards them? That's gross.
Yeah. But there's just so many weird houses in the area, and it seems like the activity picks up once somebody buys it. There was another guy named John Knott, who he owns a company named Quadrille, which is a fabric company that's based out of New York City. But he bought this house in Kinderhook, and after he bought it, guests that spent the night started experiencing weird things. He had one guest who was woken from a deep sleep, and he slept wearing earplugs, but something kept pounding on his door, the bedroom door. And when he would open it, nobody was there. And there was one person that said that they woke up in the middle of the night and looked out the window and saw a bunch of African slaves working in the fields outside the house.
Oh, God.
And then other people have complained of really vivid nightmares. One woman in particular was a florist who was visiting from New York City. And she said that she was gripped by a nightmare so fierce that she woke up screaming. And everybody in the house at the time came running to the room, thinking that she was being murdered.
Oh.
And they got there, and she just said that she was gripped by this nightmare that was tormenting her. And when she woke up, she felt a malevolent presence in her room. So as soon as daylight came, she left. But Mr. Knott never really thought much about it. He didn't pay too much attention. He thought there was an explanation for all of it. But one night he was in bed, and he said around 3 a.m., because of course 3 a.m., but he was still awake reading in bed at 3 a.m. And he heard the sounds of what sounded like a man's labored breathing that just seemed to emanate from the ceiling and fill the entire room. And he said because he didn't typically stay up this late in his room, that he felt like whatever he was disturbing wasn't used to being awake at that point in time. So the breathing was like, hey, dude, turn off the light. I want to go to bed. That's just a kind of a little taste of the area. And it's, it's an old area. It's, like I said, one of the first places that was settled in New York State. So it's 200 plus years old, a lot of these houses. And there's a lot of things that have gone on in the area since then.
Yeah, it's actually called Kinderhook, which translates to Children's Corner. As Henry Hudson pulled up there, it's noted that they were greeted by native children, so they called it Children's Corner. So I mean, this area is as old as it gets when it comes to settlers in the United States. Now,
outside of Plymouth, at least.
Yeah. Now you mentioned hearing breathing in a couple of these cases. Now, since this area is so old, as far as people inhabiting it and history being there, but do you think that hauntings have certain traits for a certain time period because that's the type of energy that was around then, or maybe that's the type of magic that somebody knew then, or somebody who died and became a restless spirit? That's just the way that realm was then.
Well, I think a lot of the hauntings in this area seem to emanate from the same time period. Like when I did the episode on hauntings in New York, a lot of the big places were present for the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. Places like Fort Stanwix and Fort Drum. Those two places right off the top of my head. Then there's Beardsley Castle, which was a Revolutionary fortress and passed hands over time. But there's a lot of places in the area, and especially along the Hudson, because the Hudson was a major thoroughfare through the state, going down southward through New York State. And there's a lot of really old communities that, and I mean, Albany, the capital, is right there. In fact, Kinderhook is I believe 2 exits after Albany if you're heading east on the thruway.
Right.
And it's there's a lot of things that have happened here in that time. I mean, the Revolutionary War was fought all over this area. And I think when you have times where there's high tension and a lot of human bloodshed and anguish, I think that leaves a mark. And I guess, for lack of a better term, you could call it like a psychic imprint, maybe. I don't think a lot of these hauntings are intelligent hauntings. I think that they're like the recurring imprints that are just kind of left on the area.
Yeah, see, that's kind of what I was thinking too, and that's probably a better way to rephrase my stupid ass question that probably confused everybody. But when we were talking about old places like this and hauntings, I remember when we talked about your haunted New York stuff, and even before when you talked about stone tape theory, I believe it's called, like imprinting stuff. Like, maybe we kind of got to separate that stuff from hauntings when we're talking about old places like this. And it kind of sounds like it's richly engrossed in both. These, you just seeing the unfortunate slave workers. I don't think that's a haunting. I think that's just
an imprint left behind.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
you sent me a book. It's called Monsters of New York, and it's written by a dude named Bruce G. Hallenbeck. And I got looking through it, and it had all the cool normal stuff. And as you know, it talked about cryptids and creatures from the Empire State. But nestled somewhere just after the middle of the book, I came across a chapter called The Kinderhook Creature. And I took interest in this because I had never heard of this Kinderhook creature. And like I mentioned before, if something's called a creature, it's got to be cool because they can't really identify it. They can't call it a wild man or anything like that. But as I read, I quickly understood that this particular chapter was based on a first-hand experience had by the author himself. And as I cross-referenced information from the book to looking up stuff on the internet, and doing a little bit of other research, almost everything I found led me back to Bruce G. Hollenbeck and his encounter with this so-called Kinderhook creature. I did find some smaller details that were not included in this book, but he has written other books. But I'll include some stuff I found elsewhere as well. But you guys can take away from this what you want. But apparently this is from the horse's mouth. This is from the dude who went through this. Like I said, when I looked up this creature, it always led back to this guy. It all started back in the winter of 1978. And Hollenbeck and his family lived in Kinderhook, New York, with his grandparents and apparently his cousin living only a quarter mile away from each other. And that December, Hollenbeck and his father started finding strange footprints and tracks in and around their property near a place called Cushing Hill. His dad chalked it up to bear prints due to their size and kind of brushed it off. Shortly after this, the Hudson River Chronicle started reporting sightings of a strange creature in 3 towns in the nearby Columbia County. Also in December of 1978, Bruce's cousin, a dude named Barry Knights, then 14 years old, found more strange tracks on the Hollenbeck's grandparents' property, and they matched the ones that they found on Bruce's property. But this time Bruce took pictures and sent them to the Chronicle because they were reporting on this thing, and they promptly lost those. And he mentions in this book that he had sent them the fucking negatives as well. So he had no more photographic evidence of the tracks that they had found. But with the discovery of strange tracks and reports of an unknown creature fucking running around nearby counties steadily increasing, Hollenbeck's grandmother decided to come clean with something strange that she had seen that very month on their very lawn. Now, I've got a quote from the book that I'm going to read here, but I'm going to wait till this series of loud explosions stop. Let's join in and listen.
We're under attack.
All right. Thanks, guys. Good job. Well done. All right. This is from Grandma Hollenbeck, and I'm just going to call her Grandma from here on out because other family members come into play. But this is what Grandma came clean to them. She says, quote, "There was something big, black thing. I got to say, Mike, I remember when we talked to Miss Jen, she's talking about upstate New York. You guys both said it gets a little hicky. So I don't know if this is written
very hicky. Like where I live it's fucking hick central, man. Farms as far as the eye can see. Like we've got legit Amish and Mennonite communities up here.
Okay. So I don't know. I don't know if
it's backwoods.
These must be direct quotes, and she must have a bit of an accent like that. But I'm going to just read what he wrote. "There was some big black thing all curled up down at the end of the lawn one morning when I got up real bright and early. I think it had quite long hair, and it was very tall. It was sort of circled, curled up, and then I saw tracks in the snow, and I never said a word because I thought they were going to say, 'She's nutty.' I had my garbage in a green bag, the same as I have on the deck back porch now, only I had it out here by the corner of the house, and it used to be taken up and sit in the lawn, down there, and things were taken out of it. The bag wasn't torn, but the food was taken out, and just as though a person took it out or something. Nothing like an animal would do. And I kept wondering about that because if the dogs get in it, it's all over the place. And this wasn't. It was very neat. My neighbor over here called me after that, and she said her garbage that she had kept in a shed had the same thing done to it. She had found the empty bag in a tree. It was just picked up out of the shed and carried away." So sightings and tracks continued until everything came to a head the night of September 24th, 1980. Bruce and his cousin Barry were walking around a golf course that was just a little bit down the road from their grandparents' house at about 9 p.m. And he writes down that he kept a journal at this time. He didn't normally keep a journal. This was a very rare point in time where he kept a journal. He actually had it. So he wrote down that they felt uneasy. They felt they were being watched. And after a minute, they both returned to their respective houses. And he said that night at between 11 and 11:45 p.m., He received a call from his grandmother frantically asking for help. She said to get Barry and for him to bring his gun. The encounter that he described goes as follows. Bruce's aunt, Barbara, who's Barry's mother, had brought Bruce's grandmother home from a visit from her house. As Grandma was getting out of the car, they suddenly started hearing what they called alarming vocalizations that seemed to be coming only a few feet away around the corner of the house next to his cellar. As the vocalizations started turning into screams and howls, Barbara screamed to her mother, "Get in the car, Mom." As a funny note, poor Barbara was so scared that she had locked the car already. And when Grandma when she went to go back into the car, she couldn't because it was locked. But,
fuck you, Grandma.
But good old Barbara, no, that's her mom. So, but she realized what she did and then unlocked the car. And they were both.
I don't know why, but that reminds me of in the Mothman when he made the lady drop her baby. Just a dick move.
I wonder if he was probably like, "Oh shit, what are you doing, you dumb bitch?"
Yeah, he winces. He's like, "Oh, come on, what are you doing? That's a baby." And in this case, it's like, "Oh my God, you're locking them out of the car. What are you doing?"
So running out of options, and with Barbara's 6-month-old baby in the car with them, the mother and daughter decided to come up with a plan. Grandma was going to make a break for the fucking house, while Barbara was going to make a break back home so she can pick up Barry and his shotgun. Now, Grandma later recalled, quote, and I kind of have to translate this, I guess. It took me a few times reading this. Maybe I'm stupid, which again is most likely the case, but it says, quote, "When Barbara backed out of the driveway, the thing went down below the hill and it just moaned. Oh, the most terrible moans and groans until the car's lights were back in the driveway. I guess that means it ran down towards the car and stayed in the driveway and yelled until Barbara came back with Barry and the shotgun. But it came right back up towards the house again when they saw the headlights, and they just sat there and started screaming more. And that's when Barry got his shotgun. When Barry showed up, he heard the screams coming around the corner of the house near the cellar. He fired 2 rounds from his shotgun to scare off whatever was making the sounds. Grandma later said that she was sure that there were 2 of them. Quote, "By our pine tree out there was one making the same noises. Well, when Barry shot, it just screamed. And this one, by the back door, I could see the shadow of his terrible, great big thing. Oh my goodness, that was the worst thing. It wasn't until he fired a 3rd time that the thing screamed and ran off. That time, flames came out of the shotgun. But by the time Bruce got there, the fucking party was over. Only 2 days later, Bruce's mother, who was at home, read an article in the Albany Times Union."
Of course she did. Bruce's mom, come on.
Well,
wet blanket.
She even reported hearing the shotgun blast at home. That's how close they lived to each other. But
she just wanted to tattle on somebody.
Well,
it was probably some neighborhood kids lighting fireworks. Like they're firing shotguns behind my house.
Well, she read this article in this paper called "Mystery Creature of Kinderhook," and apparently other people, like we said in the beginning, there was 3 other counties reporting these tracks and sightings of this creature. But this article was written by nature and sports writer Barney Fowler, who had asked readers to send in their accounts of this Kinderhook creature. So she decided to write a letter to him telling about the encounter a few days before. And they noticed that the paper was soon flooded with so many letters of sightings and accounts that they had to stop publishing anything Kinderhook creature related. And even the writer had to proclaim we may have gone too far with this because there was just so many people who had claimed to see it. But the truth was that reports of the Kinderhook creature were coming from everywhere, and they continued for quite some time. And the description always matched: a tall, reddish, brown-haired creature, very thin. And they always say when it's laying down, it's circular almost, like it's got like a long dog-like torso to where it can lay down. So this sounds like a Bigfoot. We got vocalizations and we got tracks and all the classic Bigfoot shit. But this is why it's weird and why I think we're dealing with something that might be one of these cool one-off cryptids. The reason why Bruce described the footprints as being weird is that they were only three-toed.
This is something that I've actually seen coming up a lot in the weirder Bigfoot cases. And it's something I'm going to cover in a future episode, but there's a lot of weirdness associated with hairy bipeds and three-toed footprints.
Okay. There's only a few times where I've heard of that. See, in my mind, I was like, well, fucking barn owl's footprint looks like it got 3 fucking toes, so who knows? But I don't know. Maybe there is some type of bipedal creature, Bigfoot-like thing that does have 3 toes, but he also described the tracks as being sporadic. There were only 3 prints in the tracks that they found and photographed with his cousin. And that seemed to start and stop out of nowhere. And Grandma even spoke of the same thing by saying, quote, "The one funny thing about that creature, whatever it is, it seems to appear and disappear. 1 minute it's there and the next minute it's gone. And we have seen tracks leading somewhere and even tracks that seem to stop right there and you don't see them anymore. That's the mystery. The whole thing is a mystery to me." So they're describing finding these weird tracks that are big enough to be confused with bear tracks that will be like 3 or 4 steps in a row with nothing walking up to it and then nothing after it. I read an account to where they found an impression in the snow, and when they dug in it, there's a bunch of dead animals packed in there like somebody was saving it, and there was no blood anywhere, and there were no foot tracks walking up to it. And this is in December in New York, so there's snow everywhere. So
I can vouch for that.
So this thing this 3-toed creature seems to be able to teleport. I mean, we'd always joked about how Bigfoot had a teleport belt buckle, but that doesn't explain.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and that's what I'm saying, man. With the weirder Bigfoot cases, you find these 3-toed footprints.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. Like, I don't know why, like, if it's like a different thing altogether that just kind of gets lumped in with the Bigfoot, but maybe it's just like it's a hairy biped, so it just gets lumped in, but it's something else. But whenever you see the 3-toed footprints, there's always weirdness that goes along with it.
It's true. Like I said, I instantly went away from an ape-like footprint when it said 3-toed. I instantly thought of the tracks that they discovered in Hellier.
Mm-hmm.
Something stranger like that.
Yeah. And that's another thing with like these weird, I guess goblins for lack of a better term, but they're these other bipedal creatures, and it's the same type of thing with the 3-toed footprint.
So weird. What do you think about the tracks reappearing and disappearing like that?
I mean, to me, it kind of proves that there's something supernatural or paranormal about it, I guess.
Most definitely.
Like, what did it just like kind of phase in and phase out? Is maybe it just crossed over temporarily?
I think there's a fucking portal in Kinderhook.
Maybe there is. What are you gonna do about it?
What do you see this thing looking like in your head when you hear these stories? I mean, there was even an account where cousin Barry was doing some fucking hiking by himself at his grandparents' property and saw 3 of them crossing a lake.
3 of them?
Yes, and he said they're around 7 feet tall, covered in long, shaggy red hair. They were skinny.
But did he say they had chicken legs?
No, he said they made clacking and moaning and grunting sounds, though, which again sounds like a Bigfoot. But I mean, like we talked about the Bob Gimlin channel, and he talks a lot about tracks, and then we know about Meldrum's collection of Bigfoot prints and stuff like that. And I haven't come across I got to be honest, I don't remember any 3-toed Bigfoot prints. That's probably why my brain went to Goblin Land. But
yeah.
But that's what they're seeing. What are you seeing when you got this 3-toed thing in the mix?
It's a stack of barn owls wearing an ape costume. Duh.
I see. I pictured a barn owl with really, really long legs wearing a suit.
There's a lot of the sightings will describe them as leaving tracks like a bird. But what if it's not like a bird foot? What if it's just a weird set of so picture a chicken foot. You know, you've got the three toes in the front, and then there's that one toe in the back that sticks straight back. So it leaves like a pitchfork looking or a trident looking footprint.
Right.
So let's say a bipedal creature leaves a footprint like this, but picture like the how our foot is shaped. So we've got like this long, flippery looking thing that ends with toes, but instead of them ending with four smaller toes, they've got these three extended toes. So it's not quite like a chicken foot. It's more like a person's foot in design. Like it would have a heel and then the ball of the toe, but there's three toes instead of five. They're just bigger toes, so they're more prominent and they're bigger feet. So you can really make out the details.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what it seems like to me with these things, and especially if you look at the print that they documented in Hellier, it looks like that was probably the case there. That it wasn't like a bird foot; it was a actual foot with toes.
The one in Hellier looked like a giant fucking ostrich. I didn't get any human type.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't think it looked like an ostrich. I thought it looked like a foot with toes.
I gotta look at it.
Not
again,
a
then.
human foot, mind you, but like a foot with toes. It didn't look like a bird foot. But there's and this is stuff I want to do an episode about weird Bigfoot stuff. But there's this story of a woman in white that will accompany Bigfoot sightings in some instances. And sometimes it just looks like a like ghostly white apparition. Sometimes it actually appears as a woman wearing white, but she leaves these three-toed footprints.
Oh, she got some creepy feet.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I said, man, for some reason these three-toed footprints has weirdness that comes with them.
Wow.
So maybe what if we're dealing with like a shapeshifter type entity? But they can change everything except their feet. Like you know those. it just sounds like one of those like magical creatures. Like it can take any shape, but you'll always know its true identity by looking at its footprints.
Yeah, or something like that. Like it's in disguise by changing its shape all the time. But those tracks are when it's in its true form, whatever it may be.
Yeah, or maybe just the form that it takes is an illusion. It's just what we perceive, but its real form is still there the whole time, leaving these weird three-toed footprints.
Ooh, I like that one the best.
Yeah, it's creepy. It scars me.
Well, another thing I came across when I went to look up this Kinderhook creature, I came across something, actually came up before the Kinderhook creature, was the Kinderhook blob. And believe it or not, our good old homeboy, Brucey Hallenbeck.
Oh, Bruce, you little scamp.
He was at the center of that shit too. And what I read is that when he was 10, before all the Kinderhook creature shit, he and one of his cousins were running around the woods behind their parents' house. Ooh, that one's scary. Can you hear it? Ooh, that was weird.
Yeah, that sounded like a soul escaping hell.
It did. I hope that picked up. But they were running around behind their Bruce's parents' house, and when they heard a weird sound, a high-pitched whistling sound, and he goes into it in his 1992 book called Monsters of the North Woods, and he said, quote, "When I was 10 years old, 1962, I was up in the woods behind our house with my cousin Chari, who was then age 7. We both heard this really high-pitched whistle noise. And then they proceeded to look in the direction where this whistle came from, and he said, quote, a white object peering at me from behind a nearby pine tree. I say peering, but in fact it had no eyes that I could see." And that scared them enough for them to take off back to his house. And you found a bit more on this Kinderhook blob, right? It's almost more prominent than this Kinderhook creature.
Well, there were two other sightings of it, and they seemed like it seemed like these people, the other people, saw like your traditional ghost, you know, like a floating sheet.
Oh, like a long blobular shape, like a hand-drawn little ghost.
Yeah, like one
Okay.
person described it as being bell-shaped, but it was a white shape that would float through the woods.
That's so funny you say that. The image that I saw, and I guess it's from his book, so it's from his description. It looks totally like a little floating ghost, a little blobby cartoon 50s ghost.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like, which is kind of funny. And it reminds me of when I was a kid. I know I've talked on the show a lot about me hanging out in the woods when I was a little kid, but I remember, and this was probably just a rumor, like that, one of those things that kids pass along, but people started this rumor that the KKK was moving into the area. And I was a little kid. I didn't really know, like, I knew the KKK were bad guys, and I knew that they like burned crosses and hung people, but I didn't really understand exactly what, the history of the KKK. I knew that they dressed like ghosts and did bad things, but that was all I knew. So being a little kid at the time and hearing rumors that the KKK was coming to town, I got really freaked out. And I used to spend a lot of time in the woods, and I was riding my bike on this trail, and I remember seeing through the trees just like this white shape, and all that I could think about was that it was some random KKK guy in full regalia just in the middle of the woods. And I hauled ass out of there on my bike. I went and told my friend. We went back up, and I'm like, all right, we got it. So then we went past and we saw it again. So I'm like, all right, let's take the trail that'll go around the other side of this place so that we can get a better view of it. We went around, and all it was a sheet that someone had hung from a tree. Like it looked like they were trying to make like a makeshift tent or something.
That had to be crazy, though, hearing that rumor, then going out there and a mother of God.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, the KKK is in the woods right now.
I'm getting my pellet
just
gun.
Just one lone member in the woods waiting for me. He knew it was me. And for some reason, he wants to kill me. I don't know why, but he does.
I'm getting my friends then, you mother bitch.
Yeah, you're going to get accosted by a group of 9-year-olds, motherfucker. What are you going to do now?
But in fact, it was a stark, raving, homeless ex-military man that would have fucking bit your neck and stabbed both your friends at the same time.
I mean, it could have been. There was a lot of weird shit that I saw in the woods, man. Like, I found a dead deer one time, just like you never find dead deer just chilling in the woods.
Whoa, yeah.
And there was a dead deer just laying there, dead, all fucking dead. Like no gunshots or anything. It was just dead. I don't know what the fuck happened to it.
Oh my God.
But then we would find like way worse stuff, like cats that people had killed.
No way.
Yeah, like I found one. Some sick fuck took and they just like left it there afterwards, but they tightened the collar on the cat so hard that the collar was dug into the cat's skin and its eyes were like bulging out of its head.
Oh God.
Yeah. And like I found a duck one time that had its feet tied together and its neck broken. Like just fucking gross people doing really gross shit.
See, that's interesting to hear, being a city boy. You hear rumors of people finding shit like that in the woods that live near areas like that. And then to hear you say that, oh yeah, we find that shit all the time, that makes me believe there is.
I mean, I wouldn't say all the time. These were, out of all the times I've spent in the woods, that only I found, I think, 2 dead cats and the dead deer and a dead duck. But I mean, as a little kid, that's fucking traumatizing, especially a little kid like me who's like doesn't kill a goddamn thing, who like saves Japanese beetles from his friend's plants. Like that's the type of kid I was, and seeing that shit, that tore me up, man. It still sticks with me. I feel fucking awful about it.
Yeah, I bet. That's horrible.
Yeah, people are douchebags.
People are garbage.
Garbage. and there's KKK members in my woods.
No, just one. Just
a single one waiting for me, watching, judging.
Man. Yeah, I read that there was a couple other, up to 6 sightings of this Kinderhook blob, and
6 sightings.
Yeah, I ran into some problems doing research, just not having enough time. And if I can find them and they're cool, I'll read them and throw them on the Patreon. But yeah, so to me, after hearing the 6 sightings and having the Kinderhook creature all lead back to Hallenbeck, it kind of seems like that blob creature was more of a big deal. But to hear that he saw that thing, and then that have so much collaboration, 6 other witnesses supposedly, and then experience something with the creature, I don't know. It maybe raise an eyebrow. Maybe somebody just wanted to write some books.
Based around the creature. You know what? Kinderhook's going to have our own Casper. That's what we're going to do.
I mean, I liked his book. It's full of all the cool stuff.
It doesn't seem like there's any shortage of material to draw from. So it seems weird that he would create this. But I mean, if he saw it as a kid and then it was seen by other witnesses later, that makes me think that there might be something there. But, you know, just seeing a white blob or a white shape floating through the woods, like that could be, you know, even if we're not going to go paranormal, that could be any number of things. But if we're going paranormal, you know, that could just be another one of these like impressions that are just left in the area that kind of shows up. Or it could be, you know, maybe the creature in its plasma form, or, you know, like it's incorporeal form. It's just kind of, before it actually takes shape, it's just this amorphous white blob.
Could be. I mean, in the drawing of that blob that Hallenbeck saw, it's got an arm and it's got a hand, but no digits that are. It's like a mitt, like a cartoon of a ghost, but it is.
Or maybe it's just a sheet tied to a tree.
Could be. We know they exist in that area.
I mean, take me as a kid, for example. But I mean, your eyes can deceive you at any age. I was just talking about this today with my girlfriend because a few years ago, where I live right now, we're across the street from a park, and there's woods that surround the park, and but there's this big old tree that's just behind, like, where the playground would be on the way to the woods. So like between the playground and the woods, but it's off to the side. So I've got a clear shot of it from my front door. And my girlfriend smokes, so she was outside having a cigarette, and she calls me out there. She says, "Look across the street and tell me what you see against that tree." And this was the middle of winter. And I look over and I'm like, "It looks like somebody's sitting there." And she goes, "I think it's somebody sitting there with a gun." And so like I'm looking, and then sure as shit, it looks like someone is sitting against this tree with a gun leaning like across their lap. And the figure wasn't moving at all. So we just kept an eye on it. And she's like, "Should I call the cops? Like, what do we do? There's someone sitting at the park across the street with a gun on their lap, just facing our house." And like, I was so freaked out. So we literally waited like an hour, and they didn't move. So I'm like, is the guy dead? Did somebody kill themselves over there? And we just didn't hear the gunshot. So I decide, rather than call the cops in case it's, you know, not a big deal, I'm going to just walk over there. So I start walking over, and I'm getting closer. I'm like, man, that really looks like a fucking person. Is this going to be a person? Is that a gun? Are they going to shoot me as I approach? Are they already, you know, all this shit's going through my head. I get about halfway there, and all it was the way that snow fell from the ground and onto the tree bark. It created, with the snow and shadow, it created the perfect resemblance of a person, with their head got wider for the shoulders and went down, and then what I thought was the gun leaning across the dude's lap was just a part of tree bark that was exposed where there wasn't any snow. And I just started laughing. I felt like the biggest idiot because we're over here thinking there's some dude with a fucking gun, and it's just pile of snow and shadow.
That's crazy,
but,
dude.
I mean, and that's in my head the whole time. I'm trying to rationalize what I'm seeing, and I'm looking at it, and still, to me, it looks like a guy with a fucking gun. And until I actually approached it and got close to it, I couldn't tell what it really was.
Wow.
So it just shows, like, at any age, you can be deceived by what you're seeing. And then if you don't investigate it and you get freaked out and just run away, you're going to just hold on to the perception you had in your head. Like, if I didn't call the cops and I woke up the next morning and nobody was there, I would have thought that there was a dude sitting at the base of that tree all night.
Yeah, no kidding.
In the morning.
But
I went
crazy
to investigate, so I found out what it was. But if you're in the woods and you see a fucking white sheet hanging from a tree, it's the KKK or the fucking ghost, and you run away. But when you investigate, you find out what it is. It's a sheet hanging from a tree in the middle of the woods.
What do you think about the old adage of, if you want to see something, you're going to see it?
Yeah, absolutely true. But not only that, I just think that humans are very easily deceived, whether willingly or otherwise. And I think that we can make out patterns or shapes. And if we see something that seems out of the norm in an area that, like, for instance, me seeing a KKK member in the middle of the woods, like, that's out of the norm, and it scared the shit out of me. But it was really just a sheet. But if you see something that freaks you out and you're not going to be inclined to go check it out, then I think that fear is going to take hold, and you're going to see a fucking ghost. If you see something that doesn't make sense and you react with fear and run away and don't investigate any further, then you've got a story just based on that, because that was your perception of what happened.
Right.
So to you, because you were there, I was there. I saw this white shape moving through the woods, and I ran. I had to get out of there because I couldn't tell what it was. In your head, it takes on this supernatural or mythical status because you can't explain it and it doesn't belong there. So therefore, it's some weird fucking thing. When there could have been any number of possibilities that this was paranormal or otherwise. But I mean, it could be something as simple as somebody wandering through the woods in a nightgown or wearing a white coat with a hood or something. Maybe the wind caught the edges and it was billowing around them, so it didn't take on like a defined shape. So it seemed weird. They're like, "Oh my God, look at that." Meanwhile, that guy's like, "Oh my God, the wind is blowing off my house coat. It's so cold out here."
That's one thing I will thank Joe Nickel for. There is a good power that Joe Nickel has. Just anytime I've seen something that has scared the shit out of me, it wasn't because I saw something and I glanced and ran and scared and then told a story about it. I've always found myself to be, I think myself to be somebody, if I saw a Bigfoot, I think I'd actually yell out and say, "Hey, Bigfoot, Joe Nickel says no, no, no." And then if he stands up and peeks around a tree, then I'll believe what I'm seeing.
"Did you invoke the sacred name of Joe Nickel?" And then he unzips and a army of barn owls just comes flying out.
Shooting out lasers, yeah. I'm dead instantly. They fry my bones.
Yeah, don't invoke the name of Joe Nickel around cryptids because they will reveal themselves as barn owls and destroy you.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.